So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Suzanne Woodland. I'm the Deputy City Manager for the City of Portsmouth. And we're here to have the executive board meeting for the Municipal Alliance for Adaptive Management. Apologize for the delay getting started. We are still waiting and expecting for Katie Ambrose from the City of Rochester to join us, but I think we can get started. She's pretty familiar with these materials. And that way we can not be too far delayed in sort of doing the business that we need to do today. The purpose of when we originally set up the MAM and created the executive board, in addition to the regular members meeting, was in anticipation that if we were trying to get 13 communities or 12 communities together to do some of this work, it might be difficult. So we did initially set up this executive board, a sort of subset of the MAM members in order to kind of maybe dive into some issues in more detail. But this is really just the preliminary. It's the recommendation that will be made from the executive board to the full membership at the next meeting in December. I'm trying to think whether we picked our date for December. So that's kind of, this is the two-step process. So why don't we get started? Since we've got some changed faces here, we'll go around the table and identify the members of the executive board first, and then we'll get all the rest of the cast of characters that we see at these meetings. So first off, as said, I'm Suzanne Woodland representing the City of Portsmouth, and John.
Good afternoon. I'm John Storr, the Community Services Director for the City of Rochester, and I am stepping in today as the City Manager's designee because unfortunately Gretchen Young is leaving Dover, but she's not going far. She's going to the City of Rochester. We're very happy for her, but I'll be the Dover rep until we backfill the position. So I don't know if this is a shameless plug. We are going to advertise for an environmental projects manager, but we would consider anybody that we believe can pick up the good work that Gretchen and MAM has done and be a representative for Dover. It could be an engineer, it could be an academic, it could be a project manager, it could be an environmental specialist. I think it's going to be a very unique fit. So send resumes our way. We would love to get a qualified person to help continue the great work.
I love the shameless shilling here. Paul, why don't you introduce yourself since you're the representative from Exeter?
Hi, Paul Velocity, Interim Public Works Director for Exeter. And since we already had shameless plugs, we're looking for a director, an assistant engineer, and a technician. You don't have to be the environmental things. Look us up.
That's wonderful. All right, so Jamie, if you want to start off, and we'll work our way around the table for the non-voting members.
Jamie McCarty, City of Portsmouth, non-voting member.
Jill Semprini, City of Dover, non-voting member.
Sally Soul, DES, non-voting member.
Jamie Houle, University of New Hampshire, non-voting member.
Brian Getz, the City of Portsmouth, Director of Water. We're looking for field staff. Jeez. If people that want to get into the field, come talk to Jim Tao, and we could use some boots on the ground.
Competitive wages, great benefits package.
Yes. Dave, you get next Friday off.
Peter Rice, Director of Public Works for the City of Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Colin Mazzo, Piscataqua Region Estuaries Partnership.
And now for those of us, those on Zoom, Melissa, why don't you start us off?
Sure, Melissa Paley, I'm the Great Bay Piscataqua Waterkeeper with Conservation Law Foundation, a non-voting member.
Okay, Jim?
Jim Steinkraus, an attorney with Raffaele Pignatelli, non-voting member.
Okay, Amber?
Amber Hall, City Engineer, Somersworth, non-voting.
Renee?
Renee Bordeaux, Geosyntec Consultants, non-voting member.
Okay, Lindsay?
Lindsay Butler, Town of Newmarket, non-voting member.
Yeah, Mel?
Good afternoon, Mel Cote, EPA Region 1, non-voting.
Okay, and Clifton.
Clifton Bell, environmental scientist with Brown and Caldwell, non-voting.
Great.
Suzanne, yeah, Mike showed up too, Mike Babinski.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mike Babinski. It's not Amber Hall. I think she already revealed she's here. Non-voting, City of Somersworth.
I don't know.
I'll change my name.
All right. We're gonna skip item 1, approval of the meeting minutes, because we realized we did not circulate those in advance, which that's what happened. Let's go on vacation and haven't caught up yet, so my apologies. So we'll begin the discussion with regard to the annual contribution discussion. I know we received excellent timing. We just did introductions.
Thank you.
So
You can sit here if you want to see the
Yep.
screen.
Come on over
Yep.
here.
I'm a non-voting member. You can.
Apologize for my tardiness.
Okay,
A
so-
lot of
Right.
anticipated events this morning.
that never happens. That never. So if you want to, once you're settled, just introduce yourself, and we did our quick go around.
Sure. I'm Katie Ambrose. I'm Rochester's city manager and I'm a voting member.
Great. So just indicated that we realized we did not circulate the draft minutes, so we're just putting that aside and moving on to the annual contribution discussion. And we're about to get kind of the quick summary on the PTAP request. We did circulate the documents, but I thought if you wanted, just for the record, just to give that little nutshell summary of what you're looking for.
Yes, absolutely. So PTAP is our pollutant tracking tool. That basically, it's the interim accountability as we wait for the environmental data in the bay to reveal itself. You know, that could take decades, as we know. So the PTAP tracking and accounting links up to the EPA BAT tool, which is the BMP accounting and tracking tool. So it uses current accepted credits for structural and non-structural BMPs. It's been in existence for 8 years now. So the actual PTAP database is hosted by UNH currently. And it allows for kind of a user interface and a kind of a authenticated user relationship with inputs in the town. So developers that are developing in the town are being shuttled through PTAP, largely through site plan review regulation requirements. And in turn, we're transforming that data into credits associated with development. And also all the BMP implementation that communities are doing are being tracked in that database as well. So where we're looking to go is, you know, typically when we set up the program, our baseline funding was about $50,000 a year. So that covers, you know, continual review of the database functionality. So we get great comments from many of you on different ways to make the database more user-friendly. It also pays for the ongoing upkeep and maintenance of that on the UNH server. We're also doing, I think this year was the first time, you know, we called the first year of the permit kind of training wheels. We were really focused on getting people up to speed on how to input data into the database, not just engineers that are applying for permits and developing in the community, but also whoever the regional the administrator is for the municipality, how to get things like street sweeping in there, catch basin cleanings, all the BMPs that you're doing throughout the community. And so that's been largely successful. The first year, like I said, was training wheels. The second year, which we just completed, we actually produced technical reports demonstrating the load reductions associated with all the work. So that has been provided to everyone. I have the links. I think we've largely worked through Gretchen, and we're waiting for the actual MAM database data website to come up, where a lot of the stuff will be hosted. So, you know, whoever's taking over, I can supply you with all the links and for the reports. So we're going to be continuing doing that. And then I think the final objective is we're always working to get more communities in. So we're working with Newington right now to try to get them sort of update their site plan review regulations. We've worked with Rollinsford, we've worked with Milton to get that in. And we just basically updated all of Newfield's information.
Excellent.
So they don't really have the capacity to do it. So they just gave us their BMPs and we put it in the database. So that type of technical assistance is what those monies cover. And we'll continue to do that and hopefully get more people involved. I mean, this is very applicable to communities that are also not involved with the MAM. Not only does it fulfill things associated with the Great Bay Total Nitrogen Permit, but also with the MS4.
Yep.
So there's a requirement, whether you're in Appendix F or Appendix H of the MS4, there's a requirement to track and account for all the BMPs you implement. So it covers everybody for numerous things. We have some money in there for additional technical assistance that has not been identified. I think mainly that likely will be associated. We did some preliminary work with the RDA. So we provided a searchable, queryable Excel database with all for all communities to try to get a sense of how many commercial and industrial properties the RDA would identify in your community. And it worked out pretty well. I think Newfield's selectmen were there and we were able, in the last meeting that we had, we were able to tell them basically they have 5 potential properties that would be identified, at least under the current rules of RDA. So that's kind of a useful tool to get a sense of the impact. I think there's a lot of work that's ongoing as far as continued development of these maps and other resources to facilitate work with the Great Bay Total Nitrogen Permit and the RDA. So there's a little money in there to continue to integrate with EPA and other folks that are providing resources for those. So that's
Okay. And the request is 50,000?
50,000.
Okay. Good. Any questions from anyone here in the room with regard to that request from PTAP for 50,000? Wyatt, in the realm of Zoom, any questions? I just think it's easier to grab them now on the PTAP related ask. You could raise your hand. Okay, I'm taking that as a no. All right, excellent. There'll be another opportunity later under public comment, but I just figured while we're on the subject, we'd grab questions. All right, thank you. Good. Just for ease of purpose, it might be good. Are we motion to include 50,000 for PTAP? At least we can kind of tick them off.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. All right. All in favor for the voting members to support
Can I
50,000?
discuss that?
Absolutely.
My angle through any of this is going to be try to hold the line of the previous expenditure. So if we're voting one at a time, somebody's got to fall off on the wayside if I have my way. And I don't know who should be following. If it was my way to hold the line, I don't know where to draw the line at. So I would not, coach me how to.
So you
vote on
you
this.
would prefer that we vote on a total that you could see, knowing what the components are versus one by one is what you're
That's
suggesting.
where I was going to go to.
Okay. Do we have a preference? In which case I can withdraw my motion if we want to wait until we hear from everyone and get the total first.
I don't have a preference. I'd be willing to withdraw my second.
Okay.
And then maybe once we've heard from all the presentations, we could also go through what's still available from
Yep.
prior year appropriations.
Okay, we'll do it in that fashion.
So I'll withdraw my second.
Here we go.
One more question.
Sure.
For you. In this spreadsheet right here.
Yep.
I don't know what to compare that to for the current year.
Okay, why don't we'll go through the presentations and then we'll grab the last years and I'll find it for you. in the
Because if
interim.
it's already at the limit, then we can go to the original motion.
You're making this
be-
difficult on me. Hold on, we'll find last year's. But why don't we do this? No. Why don't we hear from Brown and Caldwell? Well, one of us will be looking for the amount from last year.
Thank you.
Okay, Clifton, would you like to give the summary on the Brown and Caldwell piece?
I will. We appreciate the opportunity to continue to work with MAM and the other partners on this. Our scope of work is for calendar year 2024 to continue technical support to MAM, interacting with PREP and with other partners on technical issues and interpretations. So our scope of work that we put in front of you, our draft scope of work, is structured similarly as the past years. It's got project management, it's got meetings, communications, as well as needed technical analysis, and a lot of that's very flexibly worded so that we can be nimble and whatever the technical issue as things unfold through the year, that we can be active on it. So in terms of total budget, we expect to finish quite a bit under budget this year. We're conservatively estimating about 17,000 under budget. However, the scope of work it does not reflect any rollover of funds. In other words, those haven't been subtracted from our 2004 scope simply because of the way those agreements are worded. We checked with our folks and they said that just the way this is worded, we cannot do that without basically different phrasing in the agreement. So our understanding is that you are able to roll money over. It's just not necessary. It's not reflected in that final number that we give you. So in terms of the budget for next year, what we're doing is we're looking to keep hours pretty much flat, but there are some additional travel expenses, given that this year we had one in-person meeting. Next year we anticipate at least 3, and that's what we're budgeting for, is 3. This includes the Eelgrass Resiliency Project Advisory Committee and the 2 I think what PREP is billing the so what charrettes. We consider these important meetings to be there in person. This is where we're really starting to shift from a lot of monitoring and study to what does all mean. And we believe it's important to be there in person to participate with the other stakeholders on come to consensus on major scientific interpretations and start to think about implications for management. So hours flat, overall modest increase in budget that doesn't reflect MAM's capability to roll funds over from one year to the other. So I'm happy to take any questions on what we are on our draft scope of work.
No, that's helpful, Clifton, and I think Katie can confirm we've got about 17,000 unexpended, shall we say, from the Brown and Caldwell items. Well,
Yes, we actually have more than that unexpended. But we anticipate an additional invoice before the year. So once we factor that in, Brown and Caldwell's estimate is 17,000 available in funding.
Okay, great. Right. Hello, would you like to, let me ask questions about the Brown and Caldwell scope of work from the members. Hold on, I'm gonna have to see. For those on Zoom, any questions about the Brown and Caldwell scope of work? I'm seeing none. So Carla, would you like to go ahead?
Sure.
Feel free to pull the microphone closer to you if that's easier.
Folks can let me know if you can't hear me. Kalamazzo from Piscataqua Region Estuaries Partnership, also known as PREP. I believe that last year we requested for various projects around 425K, give or take. And I believe that this year what we're asking for is less than that, to Paul's point. I think it's around 403K, including the contingency costs. So I can run through really quick the different projects we're asking for. Last year, we asked for money to do monitoring for turbidity. We're asking to continue that. We're calling it light dynamics rather than turbidity, because we feel it's a better term. We're asking again for, and I can give you the price tags for these individually if you'd like, or I could just kind of run through them.
I think individually, just, you know,
Okay,
just give
so
that quick-
individually,
yeah.
the light dynamics, we're asking for 79,920. There's other funding, but that would be the MAM request. That light dynamics. The next one is tier 2. We call it seagrass monitoring, but we're also looking at seaweeds and sediments. And that will be 55,500. That's at 25 different sites in the estuary. We're also looking to continue estuarine water quality monitoring. A lot of that funding is also coming from DES. We're asking the MAM to put in 66,000. There's also for some reason, we having an additional product, which we call the light array work, which is also estuarine water quality monitoring, but it's been pulled out because it's new and we're sort of piloting it. That is 43,400. These are all continuous from previous year. Like last year, we're asking for funds to bring external advisors here, and that cost is going up this year to 25,000. As Clifton mentioned, there's a lot more in-person meetings anticipated in 2024. Then we have tier 1 seagrass monitoring. So tier 2 is you go to these 25 sites. Tier 1 is basically just trying to figure out how much acreage of seagrass we have in the estuary. And for that, we're looking for 77,500. And then the last one, which is a little different from the rest, came in kind of late, is doing the beginnings of an expert panel for non-structural BMPs focused on fertilizers and catch basins, or it could be that once the literature review is done, we just decide to do one or the other. So this would be phase 1 of that. So we actually wouldn't do the expert panel this year. It would just be the literature review, which I think Jamie would head that up, and we're asking for 30,000 for that. So when that is totaled, we come to right over, just a little bit over 400. I have it at 403, but I'll check my math later. But so a good deal lower than the previous year.
Yep.
There are some things, you gave us funding in 2023. And some of those projects are getting started late. So that money, we're not asking for any of that. You know, we won't want to continue those projects until we've made more progress.
Yeah.
So I'll stop there, see if there's any questions.
So this handout must have been an earlier version or something, because the way you explained it, some items were not there and some of the numbers changed a little bit.
It's possible. Clifton, is that handout, is that something you sent along?
It is, and so part of our job is to we do this every year. Is we take the prep proposals and we give an independent technical opinion on how things should be prioritized, and that was that reflects that. Although that particular handout does not reflect the late change to the non-structural BMP literature review. So that's where one of the numbers have changed. The other numbers, I think, reflect the proposals that we received from VAM, from PREP, what, a week and a half ago or so. And sorry, yes.
We're going to share, Clifton, what you helped prepare and circulate.
Yeah. And this has some additional information on it, because it was also intended to help ma'am, keep track of a few things that have been funded in the past, but for which no new funding is needed or requested this year, or things that are just being funded by other parties. But I would, for budget purposes, I would draw your attention to the top of this proposal, and that would be those that are color coded green and the light blue. So these are the items that Color just went over. So in past years, when there have been, I guess, more items to potentially fund, or maybe less funding sources from other, other funding sources, we've gone through, I think, a more detailed type of priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. We didn't feel that was necessary this year, given that number one, all these green items here, that's 5 out of 6 are really what we call the core monitoring activities. That MAM has funded in the past. The blue one being a little bit different, that we also recommended funding, given that we believe that bio-optical model especially is going to be a very important tool. And then the one that we initially didn't recommend funding because it was kind of in the process of being revamped a little bit is this yellow one here, the non-structural BMP expert panel. And we appreciate Jamie and Carla being a little bit flexible on what exactly was being proposed there. But based on the latest version that has been distributed, where it's really starting with a literature review, and then maybe building expert panels on top of that, in future phases, we did recommend funding that as well. And so there's not a detailed prioritization, given that the overall ask was not an escalation. And I'd be happy to take any questions if folks have any questions on how we looked at these and what we put.
So I did hear, I think, a difference in number also in the tier 1 number that Culla provided. So maybe, I'm sorry, if you wouldn't mind, Culla, just going through the numbers again real quick, and I can cross-reference with our Brown and Caldwell document and then update our spreadsheet so we have a final figure here.
So for bio-optical model development, what I have is 79,920.
Okay. Yep.
And then for the non-structural BMP, I have 30,000.
Yep.
For the tier 2 seagrass monitoring, I have 5,500.
55,500.
Yeah, for tier 2.
Okay.
For estuarine water quality, I have 66,000. For the light array, I have 43,400. For external advisors, I have 25,000. And for tier 1 seagrass, I have 77,500.
Okay. So maybe the question, I guess, for Clifton or Kala, I know in our little chart Clifton, it was 75,000. I'm hearing 77.5 from Kala. Is it just something got lost in translation, or is there some reason that might have been a smaller number from your perspective, Clifton?
We would have gotten our number straight off what we received a week and a half ago. So I'll have to look, and I'm looking right now to see if it's a number that has changed since then, or whether the number was transcribed incorrectly.
I believe it might just be a cost of sort of, I think we might have applied it either a 2% or 3% cost increase from the previous year, which was 75. But if I did not communicate that to Clifton, that might have been me dropping the ball.
Okay.
But every year, as you know, same probably in your shop, the costs go up for personnel and etc. So we just did, I think, either a 2% or a 3% across the board increase.
Okay. Right. So your total that you're showing is that 403,100.
Yes, but I have to double check on the contingency cost. So
Oh yeah, I've got 5% contingency on the spreadsheet for 20.
By the way, I just checked what we received from Carla, and it was 77,500. So Carla, not your fault. We must have had the number from last year in there.
First time it's happened all year, Clifton. You made my day.
Yeah, but first time it ever happened to me. So
Okay, so I'm updating.
That's what I was gonna ask if you were doing that. Yep.
In the spreadsheet, that increases just the core monitoring oversight, which was 264,400.
Yep.
That would now be 267,400.
Okay.
Have an impact on contingency. We still have the 30,000 in there for
Yep.
the new proposal. And Carla, you said you're going with 5% contingency? Okay. That increases contingency to 18,866.
So that's what I've got in the spreadsheet. We should have the 87180, 50,000, 264, 4, 79, 920, 30,000, 18, 866. 920. Yep, that stays.
That gives me a prep total of 396,186.
390, sorry.
396,186.
6. And then when we potentially add that with the 50,000 for PTAP and then the Brown and Caldwell 87,180.
That would be $533,366.
533,000.
366.
366. So that becomes that number. And then we can put it into the model up here.
Thank you.
Okay.
Those numbers.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we're under prep core monitoring / oversight, that should be 267,400.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Wrote it. There you go.
Okay.
Yep. Good, and then we can change the top, go up one more for now.
Yep.
Get it link.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because I think that the contingency in the Brown and Caldwell document also was 5%, including the original
Yep.
131,000
Right.
figure.
Yep.
That's right.
I should just, so I don't think we asked whether there are other questions of Kala's presentation before we dove into the numbers as we were working that. Other questions in terms of the substance of the work that we're hoping prep and partners will do with these funds. And then we'll dive into the numbers more, make sure we're all on the same page.
I would invite
Yeah.
Clifton to jump in too, because we talked about these together a lot. So any question to me, I think could let Clifton go as well.
Yeah, I go back to the spreadsheet that I was talking about, one of the earlier versions. And it had a lot larger number for the non-structural BMP expert panel that is now whittled down for this upcoming year to 30,000. Can you just explain what's going to happen with that?
Sure, I'm actually gonna put Jamie on the spot because he knows a lot more about this. The literature review would be done by Jamie and And so I'll let him answer the question, what that will comprise, and also what would happen if you should go to a phase 2 to do the rest of the expert panel work. Go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, so thank you. So all this kind of sits upon the foundation that the credits that we allot for structural and non-structural best management practices are changing. So there's a body of science that's currently being developed now that is continuing to update those numbers as we get more information. We originally submitted to Great Bay 2030 a project around an expert panel similar to what we did for Clean Sweep. And as you know, we're using the credits from Clean Sweep for our in our accounting of our efforts. And that gives probably I wouldn't say more generous. I would say it's more reflective credits for the work that's being done. I think our original contention is the existing credits were a good starting point, but they have to be updated with the current science and the current methods associated with those activities. So, you know, the idea was, let's do this for fertilizer. Currently, there's no fertilizer credit for nitrogen reduction. There is a reduction for use of non-phosphorus containing fertilizers, but nothing for nitrogen. And we know there's a potential gain there. So the idea was, you know, let's scour the literature, see what other is happening in other communities. I've been kind of pressing as well the catch basin cleaning, because we know there's similar inefficiencies there on the credit. We know that you're doing the work. And, you know, some of the data that's emerging, and I think Brown Caldwell is doing some of that in Massachusetts, is showing that there's more credit than currently exists in the permit. So I included that as well. What we would potentially do is a literature review on fertilizer control, just to see what the universe of credits are throughout the country. And then we'd also kind of look into, is there an easy fix for catch basin cleaning? We already have the literature review for catch basin cleaning. That's kind of the start of the expert panel process. But unlike sweeping, I think the marginal gains on the catch basin side are limited. On the sweeping side, they were probably an order of magnitude. And congratulations to Newmarket, who's our leader now for sweeping. They accrued over 2,000 pounds of nitrogen reduced this year from their sweeping efforts. So, you know, we want to make sure that the existing credits are commensurate with the activities, and we want to encourage street sweeping. So Dover did a Herculean job this year, and I think they're just scratching the surface with street sweeping. So they increased their sweeping credits from 23 pounds of nitrogen reduced annually to over 400.
Wow.
And that's just from, you know, their efforts. And I think there's a lot more on the table. So hopefully that's a good, I think there's a lot of benefits here to just make sure that the credit that you're getting is commensurate with the work that you're doing. And, you know, that modest amount, I think, would enable us to develop a literature review for fertilizer, and also take a close look of what's happening on the catch basin cleaning side. Is there a way we could just hitch our wagons to what the Chesapeake is doing? Something like that. And that might be an easy way to move it forward.
That sounds good. Other
So
questions?
these tasks are separate than what you presented earlier also.
Yeah, these tasks are kind of fine tuning the credits that you get in PTAP. Does that make
I
sense?
meant your $50,000 effort.
Yes, $50,000 effort basically is we're taking information from you that you're putting into the database, and we're applying the existing credits for the actual implementation efforts. What this $30,000 effort is, you know, like sweeping, can we modify those credits and make them more commensurate with what the science is saying that that activity is actually implementing?
Thank you.
Other questions in the room before we check on Zoom? If there's anyone on Zoom who has questions for Kala or Clifton or anyone else with regard to the scope of work that we're talking about, feel free to raise your hand or unmute, and ask your question on this topic. I see you guys were so clear. That was awesome. All right then. Good. So why don't we take a look at the numbers then and now that we've gotten the sort of substance and see if we're all on the same.
And I did have a question for
Yep.
Portsmouth about the website.
Yes.
So we did have 5,000 appropriated this year. That's been unexpended for website.
Yep.
Do we anticipate needing 5,000 next year?
We don't need money, but we're still trying to work with the developer so that we can get it to a point where we can plug in the links, and we've kind of put new energy and team on that. Monty, our communications information officer, I don't know what title we gave him, is working hard to try and get us over the hurdle and make that live. So we will expend the money that we've currently, set aside for it, but we haven't been asked for more yet. If anything, they need to produce more before they come back with any ask.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we can leave that 5,000 encumbered.
Yes.
So what I'll do is in the spreadsheet, Jamie, I'll reduce 5,000 from that 97,000 that's remaining available. Make that 92.
And that 30,000, does that come off?
That would, yes, if we wanted to include that, I think that was added to, if we wanted to see the cost difference in the allocation
Yeah.
between the communities, if we didn't want to include the expert panel.
But I think there's probably a consensus at least that we'd like to see the number with the expert panel, that 30,000. So Jamie, if you head up. Pull that out. And let's see what we get.
And the remaining available balance, that 92,615, that is made up of 10,000 in unexpended PTAP funds, as well as 17,000 Brown and Caldwell. And then $65,615 of the prep allocation for this year was expended out of the prior year appropriation. So that was basically what had been left from the prior year.
What was that number?
65,615. So we received the full invoice from prep, but 65,000 of that we billed to our 2022 project, and then only expended 33,000 out of 23. So that leaves us with 92,615 available, already budgeted and appropriated. And then John, I saw you sent around this budget. Thank you.
Yeah, I think if I understand it, just to talk through it, it looks like there may be 2 points to Paul's scope. It looks like the total approved expenditures was 566,700. But for some reason, Exeter had a surplus 2022 contribution of 47,016. So the net amount allocated to the communities was 519,684, but the overall scope was 566. So without having budget sensitivities, I'd like to put the money in investment. I don't know if we can use the surplus that we have from the prior year. We should be able to cover everything. And the contributions to the other communities would actually go down.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine accounting for the surplus. So that means we're at the 440, 751. So Exeter, that would leave you at 1, 2, 3, fourth line.
And Paul, according to last year, it looks like as proposed, your 14.56% share would have been 82,529. So it's actually going down.
Yep, that's from the plan. was the total spent. Go back to your spreadsheet. So we entertain a motion to approve 447.51 this upcoming. Really, we've been doing it in the calendar year because of the growing cycle for the communities, from the communities to these various pieces.
Sure, yeah, so I'll approve, I'll make a motion to approve a budget for 2024 of $533,366 and to apply $92,615 of available funding to bring the amount to fund for 2024 to $444,751.
I'll second that.
And this is a recommendation to the membership to approve at the next meeting for the members. So, all right. And a vote on that.
I got a question.
Yep, okay, go for it.
The number, when you tallied up all of the different components, you came up with 532,366.
533,366.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. I thought you said 2. Very good.
And we can circulate this spreadsheet after the meeting if that's helpful, Paul.
No, it did. I
Okay.
thought you said 2.
Okay.
So,
All right. Any other questions or discussion before we take our vote? Okay, John? You a yes?
Oh, roll call? Yes, absolutely.
Okay, Paul?
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
Jamie, for the record, we're still sweeping. The clock keeps ticking up.
Yep.
I'm getting calls from residents. Are you doing this in every neighborhood? No, just get them out there while we're passing by. We may not come back. So.
Yeah, it was fascinating. Like you did an effort in the fall and then, oh yeah, your spring sweeping was amazing.
Okay. All right, why don't we move on then to the next item on the agenda, which is stakeholder comment. So get back, close that out, and Melissa, that would be you.
Thank you. Thank you all for this ambitious and important budget that you've just recommended approving. I think a lot of these activities are so important in our growing understanding of both the science and management for the estuary. As far as the stakeholder committee goes, I just wanted to raise the fact that back as an outgrowth of the settlement agreement, there was a commitment from Dover, Rochester, and Portsmouth of $15,000 for a stakeholder committee-driven pilot project, and we had discussed using that to explore innovative or advanced treatment septic system issues and its relevance as a nitrogen reduction strategy. And as you know, that project stalled for a number of reasons, and largely pending the work of another expert panel that PREP convened to look at alternative advanced treatment septic systems and approaches used by other states and the relevance of different certifications and approvals for New Hampshire. And that expert panel wrapped up its work just this fall and produced a report that's full of very interesting recommendations. Many of them are directed at DES administrative rules changes, some are legislative proposals, but others are financing, mapping, more and outreach. So just this past week, I met with Sally and Jamie to explore, and the consultant from FB Environmental, I'm sorry, to consider ways of keeping some momentum on the results of that report, and whether or not that would be something that we could apply the stakeholder of $45,000 toward. We haven't really settled on a specific proposal, but I just wanted to sort of tee it up as to see if MAM would entertain that use, and in which case we would continue to figure out which of the recommendations from this report has the most relevance to MAM communities, and might be a good use of those funds to pick up in 2024. So I know it's partly a budget question, which is why I raise it here, and then partly an issue to raise with the larger, with MAM as a whole.
Thank you for that update, Melissa. So when is that report coming out? When it would be final for?
That report is final, and I will have either I can send it to you, Sally certainly can, or FB Environmental that was the lead consultant on that project.
So is it possible by the members meeting, which I assume we'll have in December, that you might have a little more specificity or granularity to, how the funds might be applied, the recommendation, at least for the 3 communities that, committed to supporting some alternative, program here?
Yeah, I think that's very realistic. If that's something that that MAM would entertain, we could certainly have that something teed up for that meeting.
Because if I've understood you correctly, that would be in lieu of kind of doing the original project that was discussed, and maybe deploy the funds differently based on what we've learned or you've learned through the report. That's what I'm hearing. Just want to.
Correct. Yeah, Sally, I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
Yeah, possibly, or yeah, maybe not totally in lieu of, but maybe just a portion of the funds could look at some of the funding some of the recommendations that come out of the report.
Okay.
And Melissa, I can send the report around to MAM if that would help. It was a prep-led project.
I'm kind of doing it right now.
So
actually.
you're doing it. Okay, awesome. Yeah.
A lot of cooks in the kitchen here, so yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's great.
it was a prep-led project. It's great. It answers a lot of the questions that we've had about septic systems and, as Melissa said, alternative treatment. So yeah, Melissa, you and I can kind of converse with Abigail and figure out where we go from here for December and what we want to bring forward. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, and I'm sorry. Yes, it was Abigail and you and me and Casey from not Jamie. Sorry, you were not at that meeting.
We do work together a lot. So.
I get my meetings muddled. Yes.
All right, great. That sounds good. All right, we look forward to seeing that. Good. All right. Anyone have questions of Melissa before we move on to the next item? Okay. All right. I don't know if we have any public comment, but I will open it up. If there is public comment, just raise your hand. Okay, Mel, go for it.
Yeah, it's faster than finding it down below on the navigation bar there. Just good to see everybody. Very pleased to see agreement on moving the proposed budget forward to the full member committee next month. Hopefully I can participate in person at that one. Just wanted to say I wanted to actually react to Melissa's update, because we just earlier this week got an email in from Case Dalton, who's the consultant that worked on this project, who are our regional on-site wastewater management person, who happens to do many different things, and that's one of his smaller assignments. But and I've mentioned this before, that probably the most activity related to innovative and alternative, that is nitrogen or nutrient removing septic systems, is on Cape Cod and down on Long Island and some other parts of our region and region 2. But there was an effort underway up until about 7 years ago called a regional data sharing agreement, similar to what had been what had been created down in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, whereby states share data on the performance of different of these new septic systems that are being designed to remove nitrogen, and to try to expedite basically their certification and ability to be used and licensed and permitted for use, you know, in people's properties, primarily residential properties. So we're going to be, I think, meeting with him soon to talk about how we may be able to rekindle that effort. And that would help, I think, states like New Hampshire that are more interested now in proceeding in that direction and promoting these systems that are definitely part of the puzzle. And I don't know how many septic systems there are in the watershed. I know it's a large number, but they're definitely a source that should be addressed. And I think that's another area that we can definitely work together on.
Right. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we'll close public comment formally. We already did our development of the recommendation to the members. Any other business? Do we have a meeting date in December? Not finding it on my calendar, but that doesn't mean it's not there somewhere and I just haven't found it. A vague recollection that we set a date, but I am not seeing one. If not, I propose like the 7th or the 8th or 6th.
7th works for me.
Okay.
About the other communities.
Yeah.
December 7, I can't, I'll be out of state.
Okay. The 6th, are you gone all that week or?
There's a presentation in Bangor on the 7th, so I might go up the afternoon
Okay.
before, but I'd be available, you know, regular time like this, so.
It's the 6th. It looks like I'm basically open on the 6th. So we could do, 1 o'clock again. Sure. Where do we want to go on the 6th?
We can host in Rochester if you'd like.
We'll welcome Gretchen into her.
Yeah.
Sorry, John.
We're genuinely happy.
Okay. So, members meeting December 6th, 1 o'clock, Rochester. Okay. Excellent. Good. Then we take a motion to adjourn.
How can I do that? So
Oh,
I can
yes.
make a motion.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, and all in favor? Yes, okay, good. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See everybody. Thanks.
December 6th.
Like with the filter?
So I was looking at, we have PRMC, Management Committee.
The region-
I know, I was,
Make sure it's shifted around.